It was a Tuesday in October, somewhere in the middle of a drive I had been putting off for 3 months. The kind of drive you take when you've run out of reasons to stay somewhere and haven't yet figured out where you're actually going. I had 2 bags in the back seat, a cooler with gas station food, and a route that I kept changing every few hours depending on how I felt. No hotel booked, no plan past the next tank of gas. I was the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fully fix, and I had been on the road since 6 that morning. By the time I saw the sign for the Sunset Inn, I had been driving for 11 hours. The sign was one of those old backlit plastic ones, the kind where a few letters have gone dark so it reads something like Sun at Inn instead of what it's supposed to say. One of the E's was missing entirely. I almost kept going. My original plan was to push another 40 miles to the next town, but my eyes had started doing that thing where they close for just a half second longer than a blink, and that's when you know you've pushed it as far as you should. I turned in. The parking lot was old, cracked asphalt, with weeds coming up through the seams. The building itself was a single story, maybe 20 rooms long, with a covered walkway running the length of it, and those heavy metal doors with the peephole and the room number screwed on in plastic. The kind of motel that used to be a step above camping and now was something you chose when you didn't have many options or didn't care much about comfort. There were 6 other cars in the lot. I counted them out of habit. I've always done that. It's not something I learned, it's just something I do. There was a man standing near the ice machine at the far end of the building. He was wearing a dark jacket and had his hands in his pockets, and when my headlights swept across him, he looked directly at me for a long moment before he looked away. Not a quick glance. A look. The kind where the person clocks you and then decides something. I sat in my car for a few seconds after I parked. I told myself I was stretching. I wasn't. I was watching him in my rearview mirror. He had moved slightly and was now facing the road, not looking at me, not really doing anything. Just standing there in the cold next to a humming ice machine at maybe 9:30 at night. I got out, grabbed my smaller bag, and went inside. The lobby was the size of a large closet. A laminate counter, a rack of tourist brochures for attractions that were probably 2 hours away, a security camera in the corner with a red light that may or may not have been recording. The woman behind the desk was in her late 50s, heavyset, with reading glasses on a chain and a deep scratch on the back of her right hand, like she had caught it on something metal. She didn't smile when I came in. She didn't look unfriendly exactly. She looked like someone who had been doing this job long enough that she had stopped expecting the nights to be interesting or good. I paid cash, $42. She gave me a key on a plastic fob with the number 7 printed on it in faded ink. She said checkout was 11, said the Wi-Fi password was on the desk in the room, said the vending machine by the lobby had hot drinks if I needed them. She said all of this like she was reciting it, which I suppose she was. Room 7 was near the middle of the row. I walked along the covered walkway to get there, and I noticed that about half the rooms had lights on inside. You could hear televisions through the doors. In one room, music. A couple arguing softly in another, not in English, their voices steady and low. The small sounds of other people existing, in small spaces. Usually I find that comforting when I travel alone. That night, it made me feel more isolated, not less. I unlocked the door and went in. The room smelled like bleach, over something older. Not a strong smell, just a layer beneath the cleaning product. Something stale and human that the bleach had covered but not eliminated. The carpet was a dark brownish color that may have been its original shade or may have been the result of years of use. One of the 2 bedside lamps worked. The other had no bulb. The television was bolted to the dresser on a metal arm. The bathroom was clean enough. The deadbolt on the door worked fine. The chain lock did not. The housing had been ripped clean out of the door frame at some point. You could see the raw wood where it had been. Someone had made no effort to repair it. I stood there and looked at that for a while. I pushed the dresser against the door. Not all the way, just enough that it would make noise if someone came in. I've done this in a lot of places over the years. It's not something I'm embarrassed about. You lock your car, you lock your house. You take the measures that make sense. I sat on the edge of the bed, and within 4 minutes I was asleep. I didn't even take my shoes off. The knock woke me at 12:17. I know the exact time because my phone was in my hand when I opened my eyes. I had fallen asleep holding it. That was the first sound I heard. 12:17 in white digits on a dark screen. And then the knock again. 1, pause, then 3 more. Even, deliberate, spaced out like whoever was on the other side wanted to make absolutely certain I had heard each one individually. I did not move. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, and I did not say anything, and I did not make any sound. I just listened. For about 30 seconds, there was nothing. Then the voice came. Male, probably in his 40s, possibly older. A flat, even voice. He said he was staying in one of the rooms down the row, and that he'd locked himself out, and the front desk wasn't answering their phone. He said he just needed to borrow a cell phone for one call. His key wasn't working. He was sorry to bother me. Everything he said was technically plausible. People do lock themselves out of motel rooms. Front desks don't always answer at midnight. It happens. But there was something wrong with the way he said it. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't cold or frustrated or any of the things you'd actually be if you were locked out of your room at midnight. He was calm, completely, evenly calm. The kind of calm that doesn't come from the situation being fine. The kind.
He had ignored everything I said and gone back to his original script. He didn't respond to the thing I'd said about the charger. He didn't say, "I think you misheard me," or "That's not quite what I meant." He just repeated the core request as if I hadn't spoken at all. That is not what a confused, cold, embarrassed traveler does. That is what someone does when they have a specific goal and they are staying focused on it. I said nothing. He knocked once more, softer this time, testing whether the silence meant I'd gone back to sleep or whether I was still there. I didn't answer. I heard him take a few steps, and I pressed my ear close to the door and listened to which direction he went. Not toward the lobby. He went right, down the row, toward the back of the building. I stood in the dark in my room, and I did not turn on a light. At 1:04 in the morning, I heard a door open and close 2 rooms away. I had been sitting on the bed with my back against the headboard and the dresser against the door and my shoes on. The door that opened and closed was quiet about it. Not the kind of quiet that means someone is being considerate of neighbors. The kind of quiet that means someone is being careful not to be heard. At 1:40, I heard footsteps on the gravel outside my window. They were slow, and they stopped, right outside my window. I was lying on my side facing the curtains. There was a gap at the bottom where they didn't quite meet the sill, and through that gap I could see the orange wash of the parking lot light on the gravel. And at the bottom of that gap, just inside the light, I could see the toe of a boot. One boot, just the toe, angled toward my window. It stood there. I counted. I got to 89 before it moved. When it did move, it went slowly. No crunch of gravel like someone walking quickly. Just a soft, patient shift, and then the sound of footsteps moving away, toward the back of the building again. I was fully dressed and packed by 1:55. I had been since about 1:10. I didn't make a deliberate decision to pack my bag. I just noticed at some point that I had done it. My body had made that call before my brain caught up. I sat by the door with my bag on my lap. At 2:10, the door to room 11 opened.
I could see it through the curtain gap. Room 11 was across and down the lot from me, 4 or 5 doors. The man who came out was wearing the dark jacket, the same one from when I pulled in. He walked out of the room without looking around, without checking his phone, without doing any of the things people do when they step outside unexpectedly in the middle of the night. He walked with purpose to the edge of the parking lot, where the asphalt met the scrub grass bordering the highway. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, facing the road. He was not smoking. He was not on his phone.
He was not doing anything except standing there, facing the highway, in the dark, at 2:10 in the morning. And then he turned his head, slowly, all the way, toward my window. I don't know if he could see the gap in the curtain. The room behind me was completely dark. If he was looking for movement or light, he wouldn't have found any. But the way he turned, not scanning, not glancing, just a single deliberate rotation of his head directly to where I was. It was the kind of movement that means the person already knows exactly where to look. He looked at my window for a long time. And then he smiled. Not a big smile, not a friendly one. Just the edges of his mouth pulling in a way that meant he knew something. Maybe he knew I was watching. Maybe he knew something else. I don't know what he knew. I know what it looked like. I moved the dresser back from the door as slowly and quietly as I could manage. I opened the door. The hinge was good, no creak. I stepped out onto the walkway and pulled the door shut behind me. I didn't run. I walked at a normal pace to my car, which was 3 spots from my room. I unlocked it with the key, not the fob, so the lights wouldn't flash. I got in. I put my bag on the passenger seat. I sat there for a moment. He was still at the edge of the lot, facing the highway again. Or he had turned back. I couldn't tell, and I didn't spend long looking. I started the engine. I reversed slow. I pulled out of the lot and onto the access road, and then onto the highway, and I did not turn on my high beams until I was a 1/4 mile away. And once I was on the road, I didn't stop driving for 45 minutes. There's a 24-hour gas station about 12 miles north of that motel. I know because I ended up there. Fluorescent light everywhere. A teenager behind the counter watching something on his phone. 2 big rigs idling in the back. The most ordinary place in the world. I sat in my car in that parking lot and I called my sister, even though it was past 2 in the morning. And she answered on the 3rd ring and said nothing except hi. And I just talked. About nothing. About the drive and the weather and something funny I'd seen at a rest stop 3 states back. She asked if I was okay, and I said yes, and meant it, and didn't mean it at the same time. I've thought about that night many times since then. I've run it back and tried to put innocent explanations around the pieces. Maybe the man at my door really was locked out. Maybe the man in room 11 was an insomniac who liked night air and happened to glance at my window by coincidence. And maybe what I read as a smile was just a face doing something faces do in bad light. Maybe I've given that version of events a fair hearing. But then I come back to the boots outside my window standing still for 89 seconds. I come back to the man at my door who heard me say something about a charger and responded as if I hadn't spoken. I come back to the way that head toned. Not scanning, not searching. Directly and immediately to my window like a compass finding north. And I come back to that smile.
I don't know what was going to happen that night. I don't know if anything was going to happen. I don't know if those 2 men knew each other or if this was something organized, or if I was sitting in the middle of something with a shape I couldn't see from where I was. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I didn't react fast enough. What I know is that I left. I packed my bag without deciding to pack it. I moved the dresser, I walked to my car, and I drove away. I know that I felt, in a way I don't entirely have words for, that I was supposed to still be in that room. That leaving was the thing that was not supposed to happen. That something had been arranged with me inside it. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror for the first 10 miles. Nothing followed me. If you've ever had a night like this, a place that felt wrong from the parking lot, a person who paid exactly the wrong kind of attention, a moment where you made a decision and you don't fully know why, then you already understand what I'm talking about. You don't need me to explain the feeling. Your body does the math faster than your brain. Something is off. Something doesn't add up. And the only move is to not be there anymore. I got out.
I kept walking. And I don't lose sleep over leaving. I lose sleep over what might have happened if I hadn't.